Right now, you can get any queen size premium MyPillow regularly $69.98 for only $29.98. Go to mypillow.com and click on the radio listener square. Don't forget to use the promo code Carter. I'm going to say today's podcast is sponsored by the Association of Mature American Citizens, the only conservative alternative to AARP. Go to amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. This is one of those days that I believe, and one of these times that will live in American history forever. What we have seen happening to our country is inexplicable. I don't even know. When I wake up in the morning, I thought to myself, okay, things are going to get better. And then I woke up this morning and things just got worse. We're seeing our freedom of speech being trampled on, our Constitution, our liberty, everything, our worst nightmare in America. But I do have hope. And today I have a very special guest, Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He is going to be on here with me today, and he has a lot to tell you, a lot. He spoke with the President of the United States. I want you to hold on. I want you to listen to this podcast because our nation depends on all of us sticking together, all of us. I want to thank you for joining me on this podcast today. I want to make sure you subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, as long as we're still on there, and to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I need you to follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Parler. Speaking of which, Parler has been taken down. Parler has been taken down. We don't know if Parler is going to come back up. My great friend, Dan Bongino, who I love dearly, who I think is a true American patriot, has basically been forced into silence. This is unbelievable. Things are far worse behind the scenes, folks. Trust me, I've been talking to people. Far worse than what you're seeing right now in public. Behind the scenes, I mean, I'm frightened. I'm frightened of what's going on. So I want you to go to saraacarter.com and I want you to sign up for my newsletter, okay? Sign up for the newsletter because honestly, I don't know how I'm going to communicate with you in the next few weeks. I don't know if I'm going to be removed. Instagram's already removed one of my videos, a video that was sent to me by a friend during the Capitol protests. I was actually there during the day, but they were over by the Capitol before things got bad. And they sent me some video and I put it out there so you all could see it. You know, newsreel, just a quick newsreel. And Instagram literally said that my post incites violence and danger. And they removed it. They are trying to silence our voices. Look, they've been doing this for 4 years. As I've reported the truth out to you, they have been trying to silence us. We cannot allow this to happen. I don't know if you all saw former CIA Director John Brennan's post on Twitter. But he basically is acting like Mao Zedong. He wants anyone who ever supported Trump to basically be banished, to be canceled, unless they come forward publicly and denounce Trump like some kind of biblical times thing. What is this? What kind of insanity is this in America? You guys, this is the United States of America. The news agencies used to fight for people that they didn't even like to have freedom of speech, to be able to talk. Even those that we disagree with, we didn't want to take away their rights because then our rights would be taken away. But for decades now, our children have been indoctrinated in our colleges by socialists, leftists, Marxists, Stalinists. I don't even know what it is anymore. I call it Stalininskis. I can't believe what's going on here. I can't believe what has happened to our country. I have traveled to countries around the world where people were terrified to speak to one another. I remember being in Pakistan and I remember taking my phone. My husband's like, oh my gosh, you got to carry your GPS with you. You got to give your phone coordinates all the time. Don't say anything on the phone that you don't want people to listen to. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about that. Don't tell people where you're at. I remember traveling in Iraq, the same thing. Afghanistan, the same thing. Always terrified. Who's listening in on my phone call? Who's gathering my information? Who's going to know who I'm calling right now? If I put, DOD press secretary in my phone, will they think I'm somebody that works for the DOD if I'm kidnapped? What's going to happen? Who's listening to me? And guess what? Right now, my friends and people that I know are terrified to talk on the phone. They're afraid of saying anything. They're afraid that people are going to call them MAGA terrorists, that the FBI is going to have some reason to come after them. People that actually went to the protest, who were there that day, good American people who are just speaking their mind, who were out there, who were so kind to me, because I walked through the crowds. Hundreds of thousands of people, no one doing anything earlier in the day. I don't have the evidence. I don't know everything. I don't know what happened at every step of the way on the way to the Capitol later in that afternoon, because I wasn't there later that afternoon. But I saw the horrors of that. Yes, horrible. But I saw it all summer too. I saw people burning cars, targeting police departments, burning down cities. I saw Antifa and BLM members and people that I didn't even know who they were, tearing apart their own cities. And I saw the Democrats backing them and making excuses for them and saying that it was okay. I remember when Dean Cain came on my show and he was about backing the blue, backing police officers, because we've lost so many police officers, and God rest the soul of the Capitol Hill police officer who passed away. God rest their souls, right? And for everyone, and for the Air Force veteran, Ashley Babbitt, for everyone who lost their life that day. I saw it all summer. Dean Cain came on the Sarah Carter show, and because he backed the blue, do you know that YouTube dinged me? Do you know that that show, because he said I back the blue, because he backed the cops, basically they dinged him for supporting law enforcement? They dinged me out of advertising. They didn't want anyone saying that then. Don't you remember that? Now all of a sudden the left is telling you that they care about law enforcement, that they care about police officers. This is all political, and it's a dangerous political game. I have said this before, are at the crossroads of history. Our nation, our beautiful, fragile democracy, our republic is literally being led into shambles by lawmakers, feckless lawmakers that do not care about you. They do not. Our job is to vote them out. Our job is to speak out against this and to defend our Constitution. That is our job in all the good ways, folks. We can't tear each other apart in the streets. That is what they are looking for. And I'm going to talk about they. They is former CIA Director John Brennan, who's now acting like Mao Zedong, James Comey, James Clapper, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all of them, and including the rhino Republicans who are cowards and are afraid to stand up and defend our Constitution. They are more worried about defending their own pockets, defending their status. This is it. They live in a bubble. They don't understand you. They don't understand me. They don't understand going to a grocery store. They don't even know how much groceries are. They do not care. Look at what has happened to us over the last year. Look at the COVID lockdowns. Didn't I say, as soon as they come up with the vaccine, there's going to be a new COVID strain? Ta-da! Now there's a new one. Now we have to lock down everybody until 2022. Guys, look at what is happening to our country. We have to stick together. We have to speak out against this, but don't tear each other apart. What happened on Capitol Hill was wrong. It was wrong. You want to know why? Not only because we saw the incitement of violence and everything that happened with that small group, not with the majority of people. The protesters are good people. I was out there. The people that were at the rally were good people for the most part. hundreds of thousands of people. But they're going to use any excuse to take away your rights. They're going to use any excuse to make arrests. Look at what they're already planning on doing to President Trump. Look at what they're already saying about people that support America first. We can't even say patriot. I wonder if I'm going to be thrown off the air. I wonder if YouTube is going to just throw me off the air for talking, for basically saying what I feel. I'm scared to use this phone to call people. What kind of a nation do I live in? My mother fled from Cuba. God rest her soul. She passed away. But she told me in a blink of an eye, Cuba changed. And she remembered, I remember her telling me how people would talk about Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. Oh no, you're wrong, Zenaida, you're wrong. Fidel Castro's going to have elections. He cares about us. Batista's this terrible, horrible human being. Fidel's promising us this. He's promising us the world. And my mom and my grandfather and my family were smart enough, and they said, he's lying to you. He's not going to promise. He can promise all the elections he wants, but there won't be elections, and there weren't. And people were assassinated, and people were locked on an island, and they are still locked on that island and controlled by the government. Look at North Korea. Look at other places in the world. I've traveled to those places. I've seen it, where women have no rights, where people have no rights, where every phone conversation is being listened to, where they can come after you for any reason. And now these oligarchs, these tech oligarchs, are telling us that we can't communicate with one another after they created platforms that unite the entire globe. I want you to think about this. This is before I bring Mayor Rudy Giuliani on. I want you to think about what they're doing here. They basically told us, come join our platforms, make us rich. We've created these amazing platforms where you will be able to speak freely to one another. We are going to connect the world. And then once they got everybody there, once they became the most wealthiest, powerful industries in the history of humankind, they now control the government. They control who talks to who has power and authority. My God, there has never been a time in history like this. This goes against everything our founding fathers built this nation on. Everything. Is that going to be a problem now that I actually said that? Is it going to be a problem that I actually have a voice? That I actually speak up? Look at Mozilla CEO. We need more deplatforming, folks. This is what Mozilla's Mitchell Baker said. This is what she said in a statement, that the internet needs more deplatforming. That means we need to remove you. We need to remove that person. We need to remove Sarah Carter. I don't like the way she talks. I don't like how many people follow her. I've already lost over 150,000 people on Twitter. I'm surprised it's not more. She said there is no question that social media played a role in the siege and takeover of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. You notice she didn't say that when BLM and Antifa and people used Twitter, used the Google platforms, used all these platforms to basically assemble and riot and burn stuff after the election, right? In 2017, January 2017, they basically they didn't do any of this when there were riots all across our country this summer. None of that. Why? Why is that? Why is it only people that support President Trump or Americans that are patriotic or believe in liberty? Why is that? The rampant use, she said, of the internet to foment violence and hate and reinforce white supremacy is about more than any one personality. Donald Trump is certainly not the first politician to exploit the architecture of the internet this way, and he won't be the last. Listen to what she is saying. I saw people of all colors and from all places when I was in Washington during the rally, during the day. White supremacy? So Mozilla is going to actually tell you how to live your life? You know, what you need to think, who you are, what you do, how you communicate? Think about what she is saying here, folks. Think about what she is saying. Now Parler is offline. So they basically took off what they consider their opposition. You know, There is nothing new here, folks. The CIA, the NSA, I've covered these agencies before. They have created systems, right? They use this type of disinformation psyops campaigns overseas. From the very beginning, what were the lies about President Trump? Think about it. Just take a step back. Just take a step back and look at the facts. Read the reports. Look at what happened to our nation. John Brennan, James Comey, James Clapper, the CIA, all of the people that worked with Christopher Steele. That includes, by the way, Hillary Clinton and the DNC, who paid Fusion GPS for a dossier that was a complete set of fabricated lies against President Donald Trump. It doesn't matter if you like him or not. It doesn't matter if you think he's a narcissist or not. That dossier was a lie. The inspector generals have said that. The people who investigated have said that. Robert Mueller could not find any evidence that Trump worked with the Russians at all. There is no truth to one of the biggest lies in our history against a president of the United States by his own bureaucracy. This didn't come from Russia. This didn't come from Afghanistan or Pakistan or Iran or North Korea. It came from John Brennan, James Clapper, Andy McCabe, James Comey. Get it in your head. Our own bureaucracy targeted us, the American people, for voting for President Trump, and they targeted him. They are sending a message. They are telling you, you are no longer allowed to make a selection for your president. We know what's best for you. We understand what's best for you. Angela Merkel right now, the Chancellor of Germany, is saying what Twitter has done is wrong. Other nations are standing up. The president of France is saying it. They are scared. I have talked to senior officials, former senior officials from Israel. They're like, what is going on over there in the United States? What has happened to our country? What is going on in our nation? Why? Why are we being pitted one against the other? This isn't President Trump, folks. Listen to what Joe Biden is saying. Listen to Nancy Pelosi. Listen to Chuck Schumer. Listen to Dick Durbin. Listen to these people. They are pitting us against each other. Why do you think Joe Biden is filling up his entire administration? We've got 19 big tech ex-staff joining the Joe Biden administration. They donated a lot of money to him. I want you to hear this clip. This is basically the Black Lives Matter riots supercut that's out there on Twitter right now. This is how the media reacted to the rioting during the summer, where our cities were being burned down, cops were being threatened, people were losing their lives. Listen to the media then.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
That ain't a riot, what we're seeing right now in Minneapolis.
They are strictly principled anti-fascists, and they've taken a principled stand to stand against white supremacists and white nationalists wherever they may show up.
I argue to you tonight, all punches are not equal morally.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting. Listen, there's no organization is perfect. There was some violence.
Any reasonable person would say we shouldn't be destroying other people's property, but these are not reasonable times.
But thank goodness for the looters, man.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I don't care that much about statues.
Shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
What you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Do not get it twisted and think that, this is something that has never happened before, and then this is so terrible, and where are we, and these savages and all of that. This is how this country was started.
People get mad and people get sick of it. People are risking COVID to explain to this country that we're fed up.
Most of the major movements in American history have started at the grassroots level and at some point have turned into direct conflict with American government. So remember your history before you judge your present.
Thuggishness is thuggishness wherever it comes from politically, and we should be the first to call it out.
I disagree.
Look at that. The hypocrites, the liars. They are lying to you. They are lying to us. They are trying to divide you. This is a tactic of the communists, even if they don't even realize what they are. They are leftist tools. They are being used to drive a wedge in our nation and to drive us apart. Guys, take a deep breath. Remember when we could all sit at the dinner table and talk to one another? Even if we got upset about politics, we were still one family. Remember September 11th when terrorists hijacked planes and drove them into our World Trade Center and into the Pentagon? And then the other plane that crashed in Pennsylvania? Remember that? Remember how we stood up for one another? And now we are really going to let this happen to our country? They are the fascists. The people who were down in Washington on Wednesday, when I was there during the rally, the majority were American people. They didn't even want to fight. They were trying to stop people. There are Trump supporters trying to pull people off of the Capitol building, stopping those that are violent from breaking through. And mob mentality is horrible. It is the most dangerous situation for people to be in when a mob starts to become unruly. We saw that. Just showed you a clip of all of that, right? There is a lot of danger here for us. There is a dangerous precedent being set right now by these social media giants. The more they take away our freedom of speech, the more they oppress people, the more dangerous the situation becomes, because Americans will not put up with that. Americans just won't. People don't. Historically, it's a fact. It cannot happen. We have to have a voice. We should be able to hear one another speak. We can't allow this to happen. I want to play a clip right now before I go to Rudy. And this is so important that you hear this, because this is Ronald Reagan talking about fascism will come as liberalism to America. Listen to this.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Right. Let me have more control of my own destiny. But right now, we don't know what our destiny has for us. We can't even predict. We couldn't even have predicted this. But Ronald Reagan saw what was coming. He did. He understood that because he understood history. And right now, we have a president of these United States who wants to speak to the American people and is being held back from speaking to the American people. We have people in government lying to you, telling you, pushing lies on mainstream media outlets and making you believe these lies. Use your own minds and search it out for yourself. Look at what happened to our country. Look at what's happened to our nation over this past week. The reason I'm bringing Mayor Rudy Giuliani on, and I know that other people won't want him to speak. They've taken off his YouTube. They're trying to shut down anybody that's close to the president, is because I feel that everybody has a right to speak. Everybody, including Mayor Rudy Giuliani, including the president of these United States. He is still the president of these United States. President Donald Trump has a right to speak. And I want to know if he's going to speak to us. He needs to. But before I get to Mayor Giuliani, I want to talk to you about home title theft. It can ruin you financially. Here's how it happens. The legal titles to our homes are kept online where they can be hacked. We know how easily that can be done now, right? The cyber thief finds your home's title, forges your signature on a quit claim deed. That's a quit claim deed stating you sold your home to him. Then he takes out loans against your home until your equity is gone. Can you even imagine this? You're not protected by insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs. Home Title Lock actually protects you. And in the unlikely event that you become a victim of title theft while a member, Home Title Lock will spend up to $250,000. Listen to that, $250,000 in legal fees to help restore your home's title. So go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Then use code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HomeTitleLock.com. Rudy, are you afraid for your future? Have you talked to the President of the United States? Can we get any information about what is going on there?
Well, I'm not afraid for my future. I'm afraid for my country. Do I think they may arrest me or try to torture me? Or yeah, sure. I think they could do anything. I think these people have gone over the line into becoming authoritarians and who think that anything justifies whatever it is their goal is for this wonderful goal for this country, which is basically to destroy it.
Rudy, I need to ask you one question, so I want you to clarify, because the left has been going after you for saying trial by combat when you were talk about that, and I
Sure.
want you to clarify that.
Well, first of all, that was in the context of a very peaceful speech talking about the law. It was actually discussing the ancient English way in which they resolve disputes, in which you would have a champion fight for you and a champion fight for the other person. And what I was saying was, let's have trial by combat between the two machines. Let's take whatever machine they say is the honest machine, and we'll take the Dominion machine, and I'll bet the whole election on that. Because I'm convinced that any Dominion machine I can show fixes votes, gets votes from Europe, actually was used to give Biden more votes than Trump, and was connected, as it should not be, illegally connected to the internet. So when I said trial by combat, I was discussing, let's have combat between the machines, not between human beings. And if anything, I was kind of thinking in a humorous way of Game of Thrones, when Tyrion, because he's so small, had somebody else fight for him.
Mm-hmm. Now we're looking at we've never.
Oh, and by the way, whatever took place at the Capitol took place a couple hours after. It hardly could be my remarks, and it was planned 3 days before. So
talk about that.
It has no connection to anything. I said, Don Jr., the professor, the president. The first and earliest planning I have for it goes back to January 1st, where I have a tweet that we captured that's now been wiped out from a gentleman named Sullivan, who is a Black Lives Matter Antifa organizer. He takes the president's invitation to the January 6th rally, and he puts on top of it a notice, let's all assemble there so we get this F out of the White House. It's followed by an invitation the second day for all the Antifa and Black Lives Matter people to come to Washington. He
was actually photographed there. And he was actually was he taken into
photographs, and I'll send them to you. I have.
Yeah, I know. I've seen the photographs of him inside.
But we have a screenshot of his notice on January 1st and 2nd to come there on the 6th and disrupt. We have a training film, which is about 9 minutes long, in which he shows people how to put on Antifa gear, which he calls Black Bloc, spelled B-L-O-C. He shows them how to guard themselves against tear gas. He shows them how to put on a bulletproof vest. He displays an AK-47. He shows a smaller weapon. He shows a knife, how to use it. And he's saying, these are the things you have to be prepared for.
I need to talk to you about, okay, go ahead, finish up, and then I'm going to ask you a question.
On the next 2 days, he sends out 2 more invitations to come and join disrupting Trump and trying to get him thrown out of the White House. And then there's a 30-minute tape of him in which he is creating, first of all, he breaks in. You see him break in. And then he is encouraging people to violence. And then he's there when the shooting takes place of that unfortunate woman.
Right.
And he exploits that tremendously.
What we saw there was horrific, Rudy. I know you feel the same way. It was a horrific scene. We didn't want to see anything like that, not in our country. But I got to ask you this. It feels as though we the American people are being silenced. They are being silenced on all platforms. I'm talking social media platforms. They're being threatened with job loss. We saw the threats going to Mark Levin, actually, from their employers to Ben Shapiro to Dan Bongino, that if they even talk about the election, that they even talk about election fraud, they will be canceled. They will be canceled out. They will be fired. Now we've seen what's happened in our country, both on the business level side, where the government and actually the most powerful businesses in the history of humankind are working together. We know that big tech is working with the left, and they are canceling people out and they are silencing people. You can't put anything on. This is totally antithetical to America, to what we stand for, to our Constitution. But we haven't even seen the president, Rudy. I was afraid I wouldn't even get you on. I was afraid I wouldn't even be able to talk to you. Have you at all been able to speak to the president? What is going on with the administration? Will we be hearing from the president? Has he been silenced? Has the president been silenced?
Well, first of all, let me tell you about me. I put out a podcast on Friday about this Sullivan guy and about 3 or 4 other Black Lives Matter, Antifa, let's call them domestic terrorists, who organized this. This is not a Trump entry into the Congress. This was being done by anti-Trump groups to make him look bad. It is true that some Trump people join with them.
That's what I was going to say. There are people
what they were with. But on my video, I show the Trump people stopping an Antifa person from breaking a window. I show the Trump people stopping another one from doing that. I show that
we're
Trump
not 100. Are we sure those were Antifa people that were breaking the window?
Yes,
Have they?
We're sure of it because our narrator is an Antifa person and he identifies them. This evidence is so clear, it's overwhelming. So my podcast went up on YouTube as usual. You know how difficult this is. Within 2 hours, it had 700,000 followers. And then YouTube took it down because it was inciting violence. The podcast is explaining that the violence was not coming from Trump. It was coming from organizations who organized it to hurt Trump. They did take advantage of some Trump people, but not that many.
But you're right, because I was there. I was at the event earlier in the day. We walked through it because I was there with Gary Brugman. He is a gentleman from the Border Patrol that was pardoned by President Trump. I was with some friends. We wanted to see what was going on. And all day it was very peaceful. I didn't see any violence. There was nobody inciting violence. I mean, I posted photographs. I posted videos as I walked through the crowd. People were very kind. They were, saying hello and how are you? There was nothing until later that afternoon. Later in the afternoon is when we saw the violence and everything happened at the Capitol. But now what I'm really focused on, Mayor, in this podcast is our Constitution and our freedoms that are being stripped from us. That started way back in 2016 when we saw how they weaponized these agencies against the president and against his allies. And it continued all the way through the 4 years up until right now. And now what we are seeing is literally the leftists take our rights away, take our ability to speak freely. And I want to, is there any way you can tell us, because everyone's asking me, what's happened to President Trump? Where is he? Are we going to be able to hear from him?
Yes.
What is he being silenced? What is going on?
The president is preparing to address this. I believe that he wants to do it at exactly the right moment. Don't mistake any sort of calmness right now for anything other than proper preparation, so he makes sure he's right about everything that he says. I certainly haven't been silent. My podcast has been taken off several places. It continues to be on other places. It's gone over 1 million. So we have a lot of brave people who are watching it. I'm going to put out another one. I have eyewitnesses who saw the same thing you saw. I have eyewitnesses who say this riot had nothing to do with Trump. It was orchestrated by BLM, Antifa, and similar people like that. Even some white supremacist groups that are opposed to Donald Trump because of his position on Israel, who hate him actually, but like to pose like they're with him so they can cause him trouble. This was a very, very professionally executed, I might say, hit job on the president, not unlike what they've been doing for 5 years, not unlike the phony Russian collusion, not unlike the phony Ukraine frame-up, not unlike their completely banning and censoring anything about Hunter Biden, his hard drive, which proves 30 years of crime, not by Hunter Biden, by Joe Biden. It proves that Joe Biden was taking in millions and millions, selling his office for 30 years. If you read the text in that hard drive, which is why they banned it. Now they ban us expressing our opinion about the election being fraudulent. I mean, how dare they?
But they have, Mayor, they have worked to ban everyone that speaks out. They have done that.
They are.
Why did the Republicans, those that said they were allies of President Trump, allow this to happen? Because for 4 years, even with all the evidence, no one at the DOJ moved a muscle. They lied to the American people because they said over and over again, there's a report. They said over and over again, we're going to indict people. The president declassified all of that information. He gave the DOJ
Sara,
permission.
you know this better than anybody. From the very beginning, when they started the false charges against him, the first reaction by certain rhino Republicans, cowardly Republicans, whatever you want to describe them as, was to kind of not give him the benefit of the doubt. When the Russian collusion thing came up, I knew it was totally false. I was with him for 5 months. I knew it was false. Instead, I had a bunch of Republicans saying it has to be looked into. It didn't have to be looked into. It could have been thrown right out. The Ukraine thing, you read that thing, it's completely harmless. And now we find out they were hiding evidence, the hard drive, that would have proved it was harmless. The Republicans said, we have to look into that. Now this thing takes place, and they assume that somehow he caused it. He had nothing to do with it. His last words were, be peaceful and patriotic. That's hardly words of incitement. There's no evidence that anybody ran from that speech and went and did violence. That's what you need for incitement. You need a whole group, and you're saying terrible things to them, and they get up and they start doing incitement. He was here. Effectively, the Capitol was 1 hour away, given the crowds. There's no connection between the speech and the pre-planned activities in the Congress that go back to January 1st. And if the Republicans would give the man the benefit of the doubt, I can show him the invitations from Black Lives Matter and from Antifa. I don't know what's wrong with Republicans. Democrats stick together when they're stealing. We can't stick together for one day to hear the evidence, and doesn't it always vindicate the president? Always. Because the president is not a bad man. The president is a good man. And he's a man that tries very, very hard to stay within the rules of ethics and law. And he succeeds. Give him a break. 5 times he's been victimized like this. Now they're trying to victimize him by blaming a riot on him that has nothing to do with him. At least give us a chance to show you the darn evidence that shows that Black Lives Matter and Antifa had a lot more to do with this than any Trump people.
They don't want that evidence out there. According to people that I'm talking to, the focus has really been on President Trump. They have turned onto the president. Now, these are the rhinos out of Washington, D.C., Mayor. These are people like Mitt Romney and others, people like even Senator Tom Cotton, who don't even want to give the president an opportunity now to speak. Some of them are blaming the president because they said he didn't support Vice President Mike Pence, and they're walking away from him and they're turning on him. My fear is, how far is this going to go? Where are we going to go as Americans?
I can tell you where the Trump supporters are. They're up by 5%. That's where the Trump supporters are. I mean, they do ban us. They do put all kinds of restrictions on us. Somehow we've been successful in getting the message out. I told the president this last night. Bare minimum 45%, maybe 55% of the American people by now believe that he was railroaded. They believe it. How do they get that message with everybody banning it? Somehow they've begun to distrust all these crooks in the mainstream media, and they start relying on whatever they can get. It's almost like Radio Free Europe trying to get into Russia. They're getting the message. They're getting the message from you, from me, from Hannity, from Rush Limbaugh, from OAN, from Newsmax, they're getting the message. It's coming out. And,
but there's a push to shut down all of the messengers. There's a push to shut down OAN. There's a push to shut down Newsmax. There's been a push to take out anybody who speaks about MAGA. Dick Durbin, we're hearing rumors about.
On Friday night, as soon as my podcast hit 700,000, they canceled it. All I was giving people was an alternative explanation for January 6th. It wasn't my opinion. It was based on texts from the internet that I had, pictures, photographs, and film. Proof. I had proof. I wasn't shooting my mouth off. I had proof and 2 eyewitnesses.
But they are going to try to push. They are going to try to push. This is Nancy Pelosi. The Democrats and some Republicans are going to push and push and push for impeachment of the president, for inciting violence. They're going after MAGA supporters.
Let me add to it. They're going to try to put me, Don Jr., and Professor Eastman in jail.
They are.
They're going to try to put us in jail for I don't know what. For the main offense we committed was we said that the election was not legitimate. You're not allowed to say that. That incites violence if you say that.
Is there anywhere in the law, anywhere in the Constitution, anywhere in the law, anywhere that in the history of the United States that you're not allowed to say that?
No. And there's no logical connection with having an opinion about the integrity of an election and anybody rioting. And if you try to connect it to the other day, we can prove the genesis of that goes back to emails that were being sent out 4 and 5 days before by the terrorist types who were going to take that over and hijack it.
But now they are saying MAGA. Dick Durbin, Senator Durbin, said that MAGA supporters are terrorists, literally are trying to equate people who support President Trump and create laws now to say that there is like domestic terrorism in the United States.
Well, this has been the objective of Antifa and of Black Lives Matter and literally some white supremacist groups for 2 or 3 years to try and define us by committing these acts and making it look like they come from pro-Trump people. And with a media that's willing to buy any set of lies and a media that tries to cut out any form of defense, they get some success in that. I mean, it's unfortunate. But when you listen to the president's speech, once again, like the Ukrainian conversation, there's nothing wrong with it. And to have a speech that incites violence, as he's saying it, people should be jumping up, running away, and shooting people. I mean, you look at that audience, and that audience sat there for 2.5 hours in the cold, and all they did was cheer and yell. They didn't run away. They didn't run away with pitchforks. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Mayor, one of the things that I think we've all noticed is the fact that there was a rumor that President Trump was going to be speaking, that he would be on Newsmax or OAN. There was a fear that he wouldn't be allowed or they wouldn't broadcast basically any speech from him on any of the main cable networks, being CNN or Fox or anyone else. So there was a rumor, and then he didn't come on, he didn't speak. Then there were rumors about using the emergency broadcast. Can the president reach the American people? Will he be able to speak directly to the American people without being hampered by the media or being cut off by social media platforms or our mainstream media?
Well, certainly the president plans to address the American people. He's going to do it on his terms, in his time, and when he thinks it's most effective to get the message across. Can he do it directly if he has to? Yes, there are ways in which he can do that. But I do think the more they do this, they're overplaying their hand. I do not believe the American people buy this kind of censorship, this kind of shutting people up, and these threats of imprisoning people. This is like some form of Venezuela presently, China presently, Nazi Germany, East Berlin. Americans never lived like this. We've never had this happen before.
I have friends that are actually afraid.
We've had bad things in our history. We've never had a free speech shutdown like this. And for the liberal press to allow this, a liberal press that once used to defend the rights of Nazis, to say terrible things and to say hate words, because they said the key to respecting free speech is to allow your worst enemy to speak. Well, what happened to them? We're not anywhere in that category, and they're shutting us down. You know why they're shutting us down? Because they know we're telling the truth. And they know if the American people ever hear it, if the American people ever get to see my evidence, they will know that every single thing the president has said is 100% true and provable, as it's always been.
Mayor, what's your worst fear? What's the worst fear for our country?
My worst fear is this is all part of a very, very aggressive effort to make us into a socialist country, a one world country. No, I mean, just to say we're no longer going to say America first frightens me. If America isn't first, who is? This is all part of the Soros, we're one big world and America is no better than anybody else. Socialism. And socialism, we've now figured out very early on with what these governors are doing in the Democrat states, leads to authoritarianism like that. I mean, look at the way Cuomo is acting, and the way Newsom is acting, and the way Murphy is acting, and the way the governor in Illinois is acting. The minute they get power over you, the minute they have you in a position where you're in submission, they then begin to direct your lives. Because you think of socialism and you study the history of it, it almost always leads to authoritarianism, and very often it leads to violence. And we're heading there faster than I thought. We got to stop this. We're headed to a vision of this country that probably exists only in the mind of George Soros.
Wow. What is your final message?
My final message is we got to stick together. Americans have to work hard to get the news now. They got to go to alternative sources. They got to use their common sense, which is why I call my podcast Common Sense. And we got to fight back. This whole thing that they're doing,
let's talk about that, because when you say fight back,
we got to go to court. This is a restraint of trade, among other things. Now they're taking away our livelihood. Look, I get paid for my podcast. They have taken away my livelihood. They've taken away some of Steve Bannon's livelihood. They just threatened Dan Bongino and Mark Levin. I mean, Mark Levin is like the dean of radio. He's one of the smartest men and one of the most distinguished people. I mean, if they can threaten him, they can threaten anybody. How about if they can threaten the president of the United States? Who are we?
That's right.
I mean, this is getting frightening. And I hope the American people start to realize this. This is no longer Democrat, Republican. It's no longer Donald Trump or Biden. This is about my rights, your rights, and our children's rights. And they have taken them away. And they've been doing it all year. They used the COVID thing to take away our right of free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of movement. Now they shut down key evidence during the election. I mean, 10% of the people say if they knew what crooks the Bidens were before the election, they would have voted for him. Well, why do you think they didn't find out? Because it was deliberately shut down by a crooked press.
Well, and now they shut down our ability to communicate to a large extent on the platforms that most Americans and people around the globe use. They've just shut down communication entirely for many people. And there's no place for them to go, because now that the internet, if the vendors, if Apple, if Google, if these major players like Amazon take away the platform, take away your ability to communicate, that's it. Unless you invent something, a new internet, where do you go?
I think that is, I'm not an expert on that. Sarah,
me neither.
I can't tell you, but I know there's a lot of time being spent on trying to figure that out. I think it's also time for us now to go to court. And the government's not going to do it for us. But there are.
Is it true to the rumors? Is it true to the rumors that President Trump will start his own media empire?
I can't.
Do you know anything?
I can't disclose, confidential things. President Trump is going to do everything he can to combat this. This will be his mission, and he'll do it not for himself. He'll do it because his goal is always to make America greater and better. And to take away free speech in America is to take away America. We were founded on two basic principles: freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Well, they've taken away freedom of religion. mean, they've taken God out of the Democratic National Convention. Every time you mention God, you're almost in fear of going to jail. And now they're trying to take our right, your right and my right and everybody else to express our honest opinions. We may be wrong. I'm happy to debate it with anybody. You want to come and debate with me? I'm happy to debate it with you. I can prove what I'm saying. I'm just being shut up. I'm being bottled up and pretty soon probably going to get arrested.
Well, I've always said that. I've always said we have never once, and I have never once asked for people to be silenced. I've never said because I don't agree with you, I don't think you should speak. I've never said take that person off the internet. I've never said shut down an entire network. I have never agreed with that. I've never heard you say that. I've never heard the president say that. I've never heard a Republican say that, or a conservative or a libertarian, but I have heard that from the Democratic Party and this new leftist progressive revolution that's out there. Right. That is changing our nation completely. And thank you so much, Mayor, for being on the show.
Thank you for focusing on the danger of it. I do believe even us, even you and me, don't quite realize how bad it is. It's even beyond anything we can imagine. This is very serious.
I think we're at the beginning of a
serious point in our history, and we got to stand up and fight it. Otherwise, I don't know what could happen.
I think our nation will be lost if we don't.
Not an exaggeration, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you for being with us. God bless you too. Thank you, Mayor. So President Trump will speak to us. That's huge news. We don't know how. We don't know who else is going to be silenced. Rudy Giuliani is afraid. I mean, obviously that they're targeting him, that they're going to arrest him. They're threatening. You heard that from his mouth. Steve Bannon, others out there who support President Trump. Now we have people like, like I said at the beginning, John Brennan and others, creating this kind of Mao Zedong type of strategy where they're trying to defame people in public and destroy reputations and make them out to be some kind of criminals when they're not. 75 million Americans voted for President Donald Trump, more than any other Republican president in history. And we are still allowed, I guess, this is America, right? To speak the truth, to tell the truth, to be able to have freedom to express ourselves. At least I hope so. At least I hope that hasn't been taken from us. I want to read a story to you really quick, and I just want to make it real quick, but you got to understand here about the riots on Capitol Hill. The FBI and the New York Police Department officials, they actually warned Capitol Hill police of the risk of violence at the Capitol on January 6th. They actually warned them. The Capitol Hill police, the police chief said that he went, well, now he's resigned, said he went to Nancy Pelosi, said he went to Mitch McConnell, and they turned down extra help. They turned down extra help. You have to ask yourself, why did this happen? In the Hill, a senior FBI official basically told NBC News Network that the FBI obtained credible and actionable information about more than a dozen people who were planning on traveling to the protests and who expressed a desire to engage in violence. That tells me a lot. I wonder who the FBI was listening to. That's another thing we got to think about, right? How many people were they actually listening to? And why? Because they were MAGA supporters. But if they heard that and they knew that there would be violence, why did Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell turn down extra security? Why didn't they say, no, let's get the National Guard out here? Right? It's not President Trump. President Trump did not incite violence. He did not ask people to go to the Capitol. If somebody is telling you that, it is a lie. It is a straight up lie. We have every right to peacefully protest and march and make our voices heard. This is the United States of America. It is the reason why so many other nations and their people envy us, because we're supposed to be a beacon of light for the rest of the world. We're supposed to be standing strong against tyranny. And now it appears that the tyranny is here. And now it appears that people are being silenced by something we have never seen before in history. Not by a government, but by a government working together with big tech corporations that are in their pockets. And you have to ask yourself, folks, you just have to ask yourself, where do we go from here? If we don't stick together, if we don't speak up, if we don't vote these people out, if we don't stand up for what our Constitution means, we may not have an America the way we know it anymore. It will be gone. But I believe in my heart that the nation that my husband fought for, the nation that our forefathers fought for, the nation that all of our brothers and sisters and everybody else have sacrificed so much for, is still worth it, and it still exists. And it's up to each and every one of us to ensure the future of this nation for our children and for future generations. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. I promise you, if I don't get pulled off the air, and even if I do, I will find a way to come back on and speak with you. Guys, please, I need you to go to SaraACarter.com, and I need you to sign up for my newsletter. I really need you to do that. If you want to still stay in touch, if you want to be able to communicate with me, if you want to listen to my podcast, just in case anything goes sideways, I would like you to sign up for my newsletter. That's at SaraACarter.com. Remember, SaraACarter.com. Thank you again for joining us on the podcast. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube or to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Parler. Remember what happened to Parler at Sara Carter Official. I'm praying for you, Dan Bongino. I love you, brother. I know what you've been through. I know what you're going through. And for everybody else at Parler, remember, I'm here for you. We're all on the same side. We're all on the same team. All we want to do is have a voice. Thank you so much. We're taking the story back. God bless you, America. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens, also known as AMAC. For the upcoming year, what are some of the biggest topics of advocacy for members?
As an organization that represents Americans 50 and over, we recognize that Social Security is such an important component to seniors' income. And so we also recognize that for someone my age, for example, Social Security, I may not see my entire benefit unless something is done soon. So we promise to fight to keep Social Security solvent. We've got what's called the AMAC Social Security Guarantee. Information is found on our website. We're also pushing for transparency in healthcare. We want to eliminate surprise billing. Sara, another great proposal that we have out there, which has got over 22 co-sponsors now, is AMAC's pro bono healthcare bill, which essentially allows doctors to take a healthcare deduction and provide doctor services to individuals that are currently on Medicaid. We project that it could save billions of dollars in Medicaid, but also it provides for those lower income folks to have and build a real doctor-patient relationship.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. For more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.